Om Asato Ma Sadagamaya Tamaso Maham Jyoti Gamaya Mrityormam Amritam Gamaya Ahavir Maedhi Rudra Yate Dakshinam Mukha Tenamaha Pahinityam. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality, and reach us through and through ourselves, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. So my subject this morning is Do Your Dharma. And we're going to be talking about character, and about right living, and about moral duty. Not the kind of moral duty in the Ten Commandments, but cultivating those virtues that are necessary to achieve self-actualization and self-realization. Our subject this morning, it comes out of a larger framework of karma yoga. Karma yoga is a form of spiritual practice that is all about spiritualizing everyday life. How to do your work in such a way that it does not drag the mind down and out, but lifts the mind inward and upward. But karma yoga is an advanced form of spiritual practice. It teaches us the methodology, that is, how and why to do our work. And but our subject this morning is not so much about the methodology. It's not so much about how and why we do our duties, but about doing more about the duties themselves. Before we can be successful in karma yoga, that is, in doing duty for duty's sake, doing work for work's sake, doing work with detachment, doing work as worship, before we can do any of that, we have to know what is our work. And that's our subject this morning. What is our Dharma? The word Dharma, one of those Sanskrit words. Don't be intimidated by Sanskrit words. There's only a handful of them that we need maybe to incorporate into our vocabulary. The word Dharma, it just means that which is supports, in general, the world order. It's a word that you'll encounter a lot in your readings in comparative religion. This Vedanta philosophy, in fact, is called the Sanatana Dharma. In studying about moral and ethical values, we talk a lot about universal values called Sadharana Dharma. If you read in any Buddhist scriptures, You're going to be reading about the Dharma Chakra, the great wheel of the law, or about the Dharma Kaya, the body of the law. This morning we're talking about Dharma, a particular version of Dharma called Swadharma, your own Dharma. And if Dharma is that which should be done, your Swadharma is all about what you yourself should do. I'm going to translate this word dharma as natural duty. Natural duty. That's our working translation. And it's natural because it's keyed into our teleology. That is about the law of our inner being, that prompts us and drives us to grow from the lower to higher. Not natural in the sense of your lower nature, but the movement from your lower nature to your higher nature. So it's natural duty. And it is duty in the sense that it is, we do our duty when we have desire-independent reasons for action. That's duty. Acting out of duty is acting unselfishly. And we know that if we act selflessly, unselfishly, it builds character and it promotes spiritual growth. So let's look a little bit about this word duty. Our duty, the obligations, the responsibilities that we have towards our others and towards ourselves. Let's look at some of our duties toward others. The things which we are expected to do. For example, if you go into a restaurant and you order a meal, the waitress will bring you your check and you're expected to pay. Now, you didn't actually verbally agree to pay for this meal, but somehow it's assumed, of course, that you owe it to the restaurant. Something is, you have an obligation. You have, just by ordering the meal, you have voluntarily assumed upon yourself, by your own free will choice, an obligation to do something. You have a desire-independent reason to pay that bill. And that is your duty. Similarly, it is, for example, when you enter into a relationship with another person, you immediately acquire, just by that status function, certain rights and duties to that other person. If you take a job in some line of business, you sign a contract to work in a particular place, you assumed and agree. You take on to fulfill certain duties. There are many different versions of the social contract in our lives that commit us to fulfilling certain obligations and responsibilities. We have duties and obligations to our family and to our friends. We have civic responsibilities. And all of these are part of our Swadharma. That is our natural duty. And this Vedanta philosophy goes even further because, of course, we believe in reincarnation. And so it's not just the duties which you have assumed in this life, but it's those which you have assumed in previous lives and for which you have the momentum, the prarabdha karma, which is already there, determining your natural duty in this life. This idea of dharma, it's all about the great law of balance. It's all about why should we have things in our life, things which are due to others. It's like the golden rule. Notice it's not the golden good idea. It's the golden rule. Golden rule means is that we have a duty to treat others as we treat ourselves. And in ancient India, Vedic India, they went even a little bit further, maybe, and they use the word, they talk here about the great dharma of self-sacrifice. And it was believed in ancient times that everything in this world happens by the will of the gods. And that if the rain falls, and the wind blows, and the sun shines, and your crops grow or do not grow, all by the will of the gods. And living in this world, we enjoy the blessings of all those things that enable our life to be happy and successful. All those things come to us from the gods. And therefore we owe, golden rule, we owe something to the great, this is a great law of balance. This is all about justice. If we want to live a life, if we want to get, justice is a virtue. We need to, that's a moral virtue. We have to acquire the virtue of justice. Justice means that we recognize the great law of balance. And if we enjoy the blessings of the gods, then we owe to the gods. And the way that we pay the gods in ancient time, Vedic times, was a whole roster of sacrificial rites. And the gods love the fruits of the sacrifice. They love to smell the incense wafting its way up into the heavens and to enjoy the offerings. And that nourishes them and pleases them. And therefore, the great law of balance is restored. So, Dharma, the law here of natural duty. Just as we have duties to others, we also have duties to ourselves. And just as we assume that it's incumbent upon us to respect others and to not hurt or harm another by any manner or means, similarly it is with ourselves. We have a duty to respect ourselves and not to hurt or harm ourselves by any manner of means. By yourself, of course. In Vedanta, we mean our true self, the Atman, our soul. And we have an obligation to our soul to live in such a way that our body, that is to keep our mind and body in good order so that it serves our soul. And therefore we have a duty to, well, how do we know what it is that serves our soul? For that we need the intellect. And therefore it is our duty to cultivate the intellect, to cultivate knowledge and wisdom in order to act correctly. We need to focus and direct our will. And therefore it is our duty to cultivate and to reinforce and to train our will so that we can act in accord with Dharma. We have a duty to our soul. Therefore, it's incumbent upon us to control our lower passions. And it is part of our Dharma, part of our Swadharma, to take reasonable care of our to protect our life, which enables our soul to flourish and to support and take care of our physical bodies. So, diet, exercise, these are kind of now being conceived as moral duties. And we have a duty to ourselves, to our soul, to protect our honor and our reputation. And so these are some of the idea of the duties to others and duties to ourselves. Oftentimes, this word, dharma, is translated, particularly in the Buddhist scriptures, as right livelihood. And that's because in Vedic times, this word Swadharma referred, among other things, particularly to your trade or your occupation or your profession or your line of business. And it was believed in Vedic times that your station in life, that is your station in life, was determined by your caste and by your social class, and it was believed that your caste was hereditary. And therefore, when you were born on the earth, you were born into a social class and a particular caste, and there's hundreds and hundreds of these castes which define your occupation and your whole life trajectory of your whole life in terms of your work. And there's a whole body of scripture called the Dharma Shastras, which carefully define your duties of each and every trade and station in life. If you have any questions about what you should be doing, then you can refer to the Dharma Shastras. Now today, we live in a liberal democracy. And our means of livelihood are not other determined. They are self-determined. And you may have one or many occupations in the course of your life. But the principle, and you have no Dharma Shastras, but the principle of Dharma remains. That is, the basic idea that your work ought not to be random or arbitrary. That when you choose your work, whatever it will be, your life's work for that time in your life, that your choice should not be random and decided by whim. And you should not follow, who is it? Joseph Campbell often used to speak of following your bliss. This is not like that. The advice of the Dharma Shastras is not, don't follow your bliss. Don't pursue your passion. Rather, we need to go deeper within ourselves and determine not it is what we love to do, what we like to do, but what we should do, what we ought to do. And the whole idea is the Dharma is that which supports and enables the happiness, not just our own happiness, but it supports the happiness of the many and the welfare of the many. And our Dharma is such that it enables us to grow and to develop ourselves and to realize our destiny. And the whole idea of Indian philosophy, if you read there in Swami Vedarupananda, one of the themes here that they're talking here is about ultimately erasing the distinction between the sacred and the secular. And the idea is somehow that your life's work is something that is determined by your own destiny and by your own teleology, and that somehow your life's work is your sacred duty, that you have a sacred duty, and that your occupation and your vocation, your inner calling, merge into one. Now we can read, best source of our subject, of course, this morning is a book called Karma Yoga, series of lectures and classes given by Swami Vedarupananda in New York City. So in Karma Yoga, we read about a sannyasin. Sannyasin means a traveling, wandering monk who was one day meditating in the forest. And he entered into meditation. He did his worship. That's how they do, living maybe by the banks of a river. They do their ablutions early in the morning, do the worship service, and then he sat beneath the tree and he began to meditate. And when he opened his eyes, he looked down and he saw that in his lap had fallen a mess of dry leaves. And he looked up, and sure enough, up there, way up in the tree, there was a crane and a crow who were fighting and pecking at each other. And those leaves were come floating down and landed in his lap. And the sannyasin thought to himself, how dare you? How dare you drop leaves in my lap? So don't you know that I'm a holy man? Looked up, saw those birds, and birds weren't paying any attention to him. The sannyasi became very vexed, very angry, and it's so angry. And such was his spiritual power that just kind of rays of fire came out of his eyes and just burned those birds, burned them up. And seeing that, he smiled. Ah, yes, very good. I have power. He was very impressed, very happy that he made some progress here in spiritual life. And so he set off, continuing his day, his duty, his day there. He's going to go and beg for food from house to house, the Madhukari Bhiksha in the village. And so he goes into the village, and he came to a house, stopped there, and he saw there, this is the house of a woman and her husband, and he cried out, "Oh, mother, give me food." And the voice came from within, "Wait a bit, my child, just wait a bit." And the sannyasin stood there and he thought, what? Wait a bit? What are you asking me to wait? What kind of, who do you think you are? A common woman here telling a holy man to wait? He became very angry, and he was thinking about this, how this was, and then he heard another voice from inside and he says, and the voice says, "Just be patient, my son. Here is no crow or crane." And the sannyasa, whoa, how did she know that? How did she know that? So he stood there, and pretty soon the door opened, and the sannyasin, he greeted, yes, revered sir, he greeted the woman. Said, "Oh, mother," said, how? She said, welcomed him into the house. Said, "Oh, mother, I have a question here. How did you know that I was, about what had happened there in the forest?" And she said, "Well, my son, I'm sorry I made you wait. I live here with my husband. I had to attend to his needs. Before I was married, I served my parents. Now that I'm married, I serve my husband. He's very sick. He's very ill. I had to do my duties. And therefore now I have, please come in." And he said, the sannyasin was so surprised. how is it that you knew what had happened in the forest? She said, well, by doing my duties alone. She said, I don't know anything about your yoga or about your high philosophy. She said, I'm a poor, common woman. I live here. I live in the house. I'm a poor householder. All I know is doing my duties. But by doing that, the duties of my station, somehow I've kind of attained enlightenment. I know all these things. I intuitively know what happens in the minds of others, and therefore I knew what had happened there in the forest. And then she gave him further advice. She said, and if you want to know more, if you want to know something further, go into the marketplace here. And there you will find a Vyadha. And he will tell you more about these things. So the sannyasin, he's already learned a lesson already about what is spiritual life and what is spiritual practice. But following the advice of the woman, he went into the marketplace of the village. Now, a Vyadha is the lowest class, maybe not the lowest, but a very low caste in the Vedic India. They were hunters and butchers, and they would hunt meat, and they would sell meat in the marketplace. And the sannyasin, he went looking for this, thinking all the time, how is it possible? What am I doing? Well, she said that I need to seek him out. And he looked right there. Finally, he looks there. He saw, yes, there is the shop of the Vyadha. Big, fat Vyadha. He's cutting long knives. He's cutting these big chunks of meat, talking to the customers, back taking, being paid. Give him the meat. And the sannyasin thought, oh my God, what is this? Where have I come to? What am I going to learn from this man? He looks like he's more like a demon than a saint. But then he heard the voice of the Vyadha. He says, oh, sannyasi, yes, revered sir, did that lady send you? He said, what? Yes, please just sit down. Please wait for her. Please wait. Again, he sat. Now the sannyasi, a little more willing now. He sits down, he waits. Meanwhile, the butcher, he conducted all of his activities, finished his business, closed up shop, and he says, now, revered sir, please come with me to my home. And so they went there to the home. Now, please wait here on the veranda. And he went inside, and more time passed. Soon he came out, and he said, yes, sir, you're here to see me. Excuse me for having you wait, but I had to finish my duties, both in the marketplace and when I come here. I have my mother, my father are living here at home. They're very old and they're ill, and I have to take care with them, prepare them something to eat, make sure that they're comfortable. So I had those things to do, and so that's why I asked you to wait. But now, please ask questions. How may I serve you? And then the sannyasin asked him a few questions about soul, God, and religion. And the Vyadha answered him in a whole series of verses that now are part of a famous book called the Vyadha Gita, or the highest flight of the Vedanta philosophy. And same story. That is, the Vyada says, yes, here I live here, I'm a householder, I know nothing of your yoga, I'm not a sannyasin, I'm not a world-renouncing monk, I haven't left the marketplace and to go and meditate in the Himalayas. All I know is to do my Dharma. But by doing my Dharma, everything has been revealed to me. So now we may ask ourselves, those are the stories about doing your duties. We may ask ourselves, well, claim here is that you, by doing your duty, you become enlightened. You're going to say, no, wait a minute, I do my duties, and I'm not enlightened. How do you explain that one? The answer to that is, well, it's not really mysterious, of course, because we know very well that if we do a little introspection, that we have to admit that oftentimes we shirk our duties and our responsibilities, and that we lack commitment, and that we often do not work with a willing heart, and that we have taken upon ourselves many duties and obligations that really are unnecessary and irrelevant to our inner life and to our inner spiritual growth, and that many of our so-called duties are really not Dharma at all. They're assumed for other reasons, that we're all mixed up with codependency and confusion of boundaries. And so there's a matter of defining what is our natural duty. And we have no good reason to doubt the transformative power of acting unselfishly. The injunction here is do your Dharma. Do your Dharma. We're defining it as Dharma, as natural duty. Not just duty is not going to be good enough. So we define it as natural duty. Better just incorporate the word into your vocabulary. You know, a lot of these basic Sanskrit words are now to be found in any Webster's Collegiate Desktop Dictionary. They're part of American English. So we can assume that word. And this idea of swadharma, your own dharma, it's all about self-actualization. It's about recognizing that you have an inner law. Greek philosophers called it enteleki. That means your inner law, your teleology. That means the law of growth within you, that you have a telos, a natural purpose to your life. And just as a tree growing in an orchard has to put down roots and a sapling and grow a trunk and branches, put out leaves, then produce flower. If it's a good tree, it's following its natural teleology. It produces the leaves, and then it produces the flowers, and then from the flowers come the fruits. And that's a good tree. And so similarly it is for us, if we are to do our Dharma, we would enable the completion of our teleology. We would honor ourselves, enabling ourselves to be ourselves. And the idea is that we will fulfill our natural character, and that we will make our full contribution to the universe. Remember, it's all about balance. You don't get off just giving a little bit. You have to give the full amount of your whole being. That means that you have to be a full being. You have to be a fully manifested being. And therefore, Swadharma is all about being all that you can be. And that sounds maybe like a truism from the human potential movement. But then you have to ask, well, where did the human potential movement, the whole New Age philosophy and all that, where did all that come from? It all comes from the wisdom of the East. It all comes from this idea of dharma, that you have a soul, that you have a self, that you have some hidden potential within you that has to be realized, that has to be manifested. And just as it comes with a popular culture, great Walt Disney movie about the Lion King, where the Lion King is given that admonishment that why are you living like this? Why are you, you are much more than what you have become. The way you're living, you see, is not in accord with your dharma. Your destiny is to be something much greater. So the idea of what is our dharma, our natural duties in life undergo, that is, our natural duties are not fixed. It's not as if your dharma is a fixed set of duties. We're not locked into any hereditary caste system anymore. And that your duties in life change. Your dharma changes. Now, your Vedanta philosophy doesn't change, and your metaphysics don't change. That's why it's good to study philosophy, because everything that you put into it remains the same. It's not like a living, growing process. If you study physics, then whatever you learn is kind of obsolete in a month. But the truths of metaphysics don't change. The truth of your epistemology doesn't change. Your ethics don't change. Your ideal of your ultimate goal of your life, that doesn't change. But of course, you yourself, we're embodied souls, we're jivatmans. And we ourselves, we do change. We're in a constant process of, in a book of life, change chapter after chapter. The plot unfolds, the character grows, matures. What he's doing is always something different. He enters into, leaves old relationships, enters into new relationships, finishes another one occupation, maybe starts a whole new occupation or line of work, maybe moves from one place far away to another place, which gives a completely different environment, maybe enter into retirement and leave the workaday world altogether. In Vedic India, they had the idea of, they had the teaching about the stages of life. Kind of a helpful sort system. They used to talk here about when you're very young, the student life, then the householder life, then when you retire, the life of a recluse, and then the life of renunciation. And that at each, the idea being that at each stage of life, these are just general, at each stage of life, that we have to reconceptualize our Dharma. And we have to redefine and reconfigure our idea about what we have to do with our life. What is our path? What is the right path? The right paths, then, if we do that, do with introspection, that becomes clear. The teaching is do your Dharma. Once you have decided, once you've done introspection, and you've determined what is your duty, then you need to commit yourself to it. And we know very well that it's natural for us sometimes to become discontent with our lot in life, and with our life's work. It may be that we can discontent with our religion. Maybe sometime you feel, well, why am I a Vedantin? Well, maybe I ought to become a Buddhist, is the idea. Maybe they think about that, but the teaching here is do your Dharma. That is, it's better to do your own duty. And it's true that the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. And that oftentimes we find ourselves looking there on the other side of the fence at others who seem to be living a very happy and successful life. And so maybe we compare ourselves with others. But in the matter of Dharma, comparisons are odious. And the teaching here is that it's better to do your own Dharma. Shreyan swadharma viguna paradharma swanushtita swadharme nidhanam shreya paradharma vayavaha. That means in the Bhagavad Gita we read, this is what we're talking about, karma. Bhagavad Gita there it says, better to do your own natural duty determined by the laws of your own inner being than to leave that and do the Dharma of another. Better to do your own duties, even though they're not very well done, than to take on the duties of another, which will fill your life with bhava, that of great fear. So the idea is pursue your own. Right? That's the American idea, that we have the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Happiness. Who is happiness? The pursuit of your own happiness. Pursuit of your own inner happiness. Pursuit of your true happiness. And well, that's a subject for another time. Each is great in his own place, but the duty of one is not the duty of another. And the best way that we can support the universe is to do our Dharma, to do our duty, to actualize ourselves, and to make our full commitment to the natural order of things. So, this is something about the subject here of Dharma. Doing your duty, that is, working with having desire-independent reasons for your action. That's duties. Doing your duties helps to build character, purifies the mind, and builds our moral character. For spiritual life, determining our duty and doing our dharma is the right method. But we also need, however, in order to be efficient at this, in order to achieve the results of the householders in the stories, in order to achieve those results, we already got the method, we know the method, but we need to learn more about the methodology. That is, we need to learn more about we know about what we should do, but we need to learn more about how and why we should do it. That's the study of karma yoga. Doing your duty for duty's sake. Doing your work for work's sake. Doing your work, which we did, doing your work with detachment. Doing your work as worship. It's karma yoga. And so we'll discuss this subject more, I think, in our next lecture coming up. Okay. Om Dyo Shanti Antariksha Shanti Prithvi Shanti Apa Shanti Oshadaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishwe Deva Shanti Brahma Shanti Saravam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Same Shantiredhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, peace is in heaven. Peace is on the earth. Peace is in the sky and in the waters. The herbs and plants and trees are full of peace. The gods are peaceful. May this eternal universal peace enter our souls and beings. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all.